In January of 1990, California Congressman William Dannemeyer and the Reverend Lou Sheldon of the Traditional Values Coalition called for the creation of a task force for the preservation of the heterosexual ethic. Later that same month, Secretary of Health and Human Services Louis Sullivan met with Lou Sheldon, Elizabeth Moberly of Exodus International, and others to discuss the possibility of obtaining federal funds to create a government-sponsored clinic for reparative therapy.
There is no government support in the here and now. I would like to see that happen later on. I would like to challenge the government itself. I would like to challenge the various professional agencies, the APA and others, to seriously investigate what is happening right now.
The premise that homosexuality is preventable is now the focus of a two-day symposium in Orange County.
Homosexuality is a condition that can receive counseling and assistance, and we have coined the word reparative therapy.
Homosexuality is a sin.
There are others within our government, like Congressman William Dannemeyer, who is quite outspoken on the issue of homosexuality from a political perspective. And he's written a book called Shadow in the Land, and it's published by Ignatius House, which deals basically, in the words of the gay community, their own agenda which they desire to accomplish. There are those like Congressman Dannemeyer who do not necessarily represent Exodus or work with Exodus, but who also happen to recognize the reality of treatment and recovery from homosexuality.
Scheduled to speak, controversial Congressman Bill Dannemeyer and the chairman of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, Dr. William Allen. The topic of his speech tomorrow is listed as Blacks, Animals, Homosexuals. What is a minority?
We believe in equal rights for all people, not special recognition and rights for deviant sexual behaviors. Will the next step for special rights be bestiality or pedophilia? Additionally, this legislation is unnecessary, as the homosexual community enjoys a higher standard of living than the average American.
If you read the literature about prejudicial comments about Jews in the turn of the century, blacks in the 20s and 30s, and almost any stigmatized group that was accepted as a stigmatized group, in other words, who were popularly allowed to be hated for a while, the literature is almost identical. You could superimpose the words used against gay people on the words used against Jews, on the words used against blacks. Sexually promiscuous, not caring about family structures, not caring about society. It's astonishing how uniform prejudice is.
The United States Supreme Court has stated in the Bowers versus Hardwick case that homosexuality is a behavior, not a true, insular and discrete minority. It is an injustice to those that struggled for the civil rights movement in the 1960s to have their efforts manipulated by an unhealthy, immoral sexual behavior. The freedom train to Selma did not stop at Sodom.
The proper response to the homosexual need not mean social legitimization of homosexuality to make it equal to heterosexual. When you consider that really, from a clinical perspective, homosexuality is only one of 15 sexual deviations, and why we would want to elevate this to a status as a race and give them minority rights, I think if I were a minority member, I would feel rather offended that one form of sexual deviancy was being equated to my race.
In February of 1993, the NAACP unanimously passed a resolution supporting equal and civil rights for all citizens, regardless of sexual orientation.
You dare compare yourself with blacks? Do you understand that the freedom train to Selma and the blood that was shed going for that freedom train did not end in sodomy?
Yeah, over here, please.
Reverend, I've heard that line before.
I really think sometimes that gays are the new communists. That now that the Cold War is over and the walls are coming down, the right-wing fundamentalists have to have some group to fear and to hate. We're the evil ones now. We're the ones trying to destroy the fabric of America.
Homosexual rights, discrimination against religious schools, women in combat units. That's change, all right. But that's not the kind of change America needs. It's not the kind of change America wants. And it's not the kind of change we can abide in a nation we still call God's country.
Recently, there's been this move that on top of being a born-again Christian, you also have to subscribe to this list of this political agenda. Yeah. You have to be anti-abortion, You have to be anti-gay. You have to be pro-military spending. You have to be against the National Endowment for the Arts. They almost describe it as the new Civil War. I've heard it described on Christian radio. I listen to it all the time. That this is the new Civil War, but except this Civil War is going to be a civil war of godly values versus ungodly values.
When family values are undermined, our country suffers. Americans try to raise their children to understand right and wrong, only to be told that every so-called lifestyle alternative is morally equivalent. That is wrong.
They're very evasive when you start asking them about traditional family values. I think it just has, family values just has this nice ring to it, and just by saying that they're pro-family implies that we're not.
We certainly contributed our fair share to the families, with Mike having a child and me having 3. That's been the other thing that's always kind of got us, from the Sheldonites and stuff saying, well, we're here to tear down the family. Well, geez, we spend time trying to build the family, at least twice a week whenever the kids are over. And we probably spend more time with our children in a family setting and doing family type things with them to make sure that we're nourishing and raising good, kids, good healthy kids, a couple of times a week plus weekends.
We started joking about getting married. In fact, a friend suggested to us, hey, you guys ought to get married. And he meant it as a joke, and we meant it as a joke at first. And then the longer we thought about it, we thought, well, why not? Why not actually get married? Why not actually commit ourselves to each other in some sort of formal ceremony? So we held a ceremony, and each of us had our own best man, and we had to go to a bakery and get 2 grooms on the cake. The lady thought it was a little strange, but and we exchanged rings and had vows, and we really consider ourselves married. The society doesn't recognize it. It's not legally recognized, but I'm more married now than I was when I was married.
I just would like to know why you find it necessary to engage in sexual intercourse with another male. You can have a male friendship, but why do you find that extra step? Why do you engage in that?
Why did you go the extra step, guys?
We could turn that around and ask the question from the heterosexual perspective. Why do heterosexual people who are attracted and in love with each other feel the necessity to express that love to each other sexually?
Okay.
That's the answer to that question.
There have been even some evangelicals who have suggested that if gay people can't become heterosexual, then let them at least maybe live together, in a happy home, but just don't genitalize. That gets that's not only reflective of a ridiculous idea about sexuality, but it points up that what they really are upset about is not homosexual orientation as such, but certain specific genital acts.
There's this attitude within Exodus that you pick up that somehow it's male homosexuality that they're really concerned about. You hear a lot about, most of the leaders of the ministry are men. When they talk about being gay, they're almost always talking about men. It's almost as though lesbianism isn't even really thought about.
I can remember my whole childhood being a tomboy, a really strong tomboy, and that was really cute. But the little boy down the street who was reading books and playing with dolls, that was not cute, He was a little faggot, and they didn't like it. And I think it was much less acceptable for him. And I think it's mostly caused by sexism and our real hatred of women in this society. And when I look at myself growing up as a masculine woman and being in business and having my own business, it's very acceptable. I mean, men like that, women like that. Being a strong woman is fine. Being an effeminate man is to be more like a woman, and that's not okay.
One of my thoughts about homophobia, at least in our society, is that it's basically a fear of women. And I can elaborate on this a little bit more, but it's the mistaken belief that, again, if a man is gay, he must be like a woman. And in our society, to be weak or effeminate is considered terrible, and people like that are supposed to be despised or made fun of, gay or straight.
Since women are a non-valued gender, why would anyone give up the gender of power to take on the gender of powerlessness? And my way of putting it is, I cannot understand a society that is more afraid of a man in a dress than a man in a soldier's uniform.
Well, a lot of people are very prejudiced against women, that the only thing that makes a heterosexual couple sexual is that there's a man in it. Two women together aren't sexual. I mean, they're asexual.
The attitudes about women, I think if you looked even deeper within Exodus, the attitude about women are horrendous. You know, what a woman is, you know, what a good woman is, what a feminine woman is. It's very, I think, maybe this is cruel, but I think the image is almost that women are supposed to be like Stepford wives, that, you know, that just do the good Christian thing and don't ask any questions. And
dear God, I know you want these women to be helped, and so I'm just going to ask you to send some hairdressers here to help them. So that's at the beginning of the conference. I put out an alert for everyone that did hair, and we came up with 4 hairdressers. And the original name of this class was not Makeovers. The original name of this class was Outward Reflections of Inner Wholeness. The main purpose is to get women to help other women and to kind of fuss over them and make over them and pamper them and to show them how pretty they can be, to get an image of themselves that maybe they never ever had. They've never ever thought of themselves as pretty or attractive. And once they can see that they're attractive, they begin to believe it. And very often, the women will feel very feminine inside, but they haven't taken the steps of breaking free from the very butch appearance or an appearance that would kind of cause men to back away from them or to not even want them. And that appearance just really needs to be broken down. It needs to reflect their wholeness and not their brokenness.
My car messed up on me on the way down here, and I had to change the radiator hose out, and I went all over saying, if anybody feels masculine, I have a radiator hose that needs to be changed, and because I didn't want to do that, and that was something new for me because it's no problem, you know, but it was kind of a statement for me that I want to be feminine for a change. I don't want to work on my car.
At one point, they talked about the importance of conveying masculine characteristics that would help us. And so they actually taught us how to sit appropriately. What they told us was that to cross leg over leg, knee over knee was not appropriate, that was too effeminate looking. And that on occasion it was okay to cross ankle over ankle if you were sitting down, but a real man takes his ankle and puts it over his other knee. And that's how men sit.
I would say that the best makeover for the men is a softball game, a softball team where they can learn to have some good experiences through going out for sports that kind of live over the real awful experiences of being up at bat all by yourself and never hitting a ball, and or being stuck out in left field and never catching a ball, and they just are around people that are like themselves, that don't do it too well, and encourage them every step they take, like sort of like Little League or something like that.